Like to call it Duval Committee of the Whole Workshop for March 3rd, 2026 to order at 5:32 p.m. We have a relatively light Committee of the Whole agenda as well as the council meeting agenda, but reviewing the regular meeting agenda, are there any concerns, comments, feedback, or anything? I think we only have a couple of items of business. And then my hope is we'll have a little time after Chief Keller's report to also pull in some of the committee reports. So not seeing any feedback. So with that, I will turn it over to Chief Keller, who is going to provide a Duval Police Department year in review.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, and fellow employees from the City of Duval. So this is going to be a pretty good overview of our last year events and things that are going on in our agency and department. Has some statistics in there. It's kind of good to kind of have the perspective of where we are and where we've been. Next, please. So one of the things that we really tried to be involved in is a lot of our community events. As you can see, there's a number that happened here in Duval: Earth Day, Easter egg hunt, Duval Days, which is all hands on deck as far as we're concerned, and Sandblast National Night Out. We did something a little different this last year than we did before, so it seemed to turn out pretty well, and we're going to try to build on that this year. Summer Stage, we had probably one of the biggest turnouts at Summer Stage, and truly, we couldn't be as many places we needed to be that day, but it was a very good event, and nothing came out of that. Behind the Badge campaign is we're actively involved in that process. Behind the Badge is an organization that deals with law enforcement line of death events, as well as wellness for officers and family members of those that are in law enforcement. It's more of a regional thing that happens throughout the area. I have been involved with that for 20, 25 years, 30 years. But we try to be involved in that process because unfortunately sometimes it impacts us and our friends. Seattle Cancer Care Alliance fundraiser, we were actively involved in that. Law Enforcement Torch Run campaign, which deals with Special Olympics Washington as well as Special Olympics International. Main Street Trick or Treat, Light Up Duval, Snoqualmie Valley Food Drive. Shop with a Cop, which is where we go over to Woodinville and take some children out that probably don't have the luxury of going shopping as much as we think. And so it's kind of nice to kind of take them out there and build that bond with somebody at a younger age. Sort of through the copy at Campfire with Cop. We're probably the first agency in the US to actually have a Campfire with a Cop type of an event. We took advantage of it because we're right down by Depot Park and a nice fire pit down there. We did it last year. It was very, very cold. But we're planning on doing it this coming Friday, not this week, but next week. And it should be a little bit warmer, a little bit lighter at night. Should still be a really good event. So it's kind of a knockoff of the copy you usually see at all the coffee shops. Next, please. In order for us to maintain our staffing and personnel up to some of those areas that may be low frequency but high likelihood of things happening, there's a lot of training that we do throughout the year. Every officer is required to do at a minimum 24 hours of in-service training each year. We strive to not just do the minimum. We try to do a little bit more. And there are a number of things that come up through the process of us evaluating our training needs. Some of the things that we covered last year dealt with workplace harassment, discrimination, retaliation. Field Training Officers Academy, when somebody gets out of the academy, they have to go through what's field training. That's another 12 to 14 weeks of individual training with a specialized trained officer that kind of teaches them how to really be a police officer on the street. The academy is very generic because they teach officers throughout the state. Once they get out of the academy, they have a very basic level of law enforcement knowledge, and they come out to us, and this is where we actually teach them how to really apply those concepts and develop them and make sure they kind of follow our procedures. FBI LEADA Supervisor Leadership Institute is a week-long training, as well as Command Leadership Institute, and those are two classes that I've attended, but I want my supervisors to attend. It is, we have instructors that come throughout the US that come in and teach specific concepts on leadership. It's always good to kind of keep that leadership knowledge kind of honed in a little bit. There's always a lot of new concepts, and it's also really nice to kind of see the networking that you get out of that process, because you spend a lot of time talking with other individuals from within our state or in our region that maybe have similar problems or difficulties at their agency that we're able to work through and go through that process. I attended the International Association of Chiefs of Police Conference, which was in Denver. It's nice to see the national perspective, as well as the things that are coming out in Friends of Law Enforcement. It is a worldwide association of chiefs of police. Met a number of people there from Thailand, India, a lot of Eastern European countries as well. And it's kind of nice to kind of see how the other half lives someplace. One of the big events we talked about was how some of those national emergencies, such as the fires that occurred down in California, some of the things that kind of came up through that process, and how you learn from those and go through that, as well as France gave a very good showing on how they dealt with the Olympics and prepared for the Paris Olympics when they went through that process. And it's truly, there's some different legal requirements internationally than there are in the US. So there's some different techniques that they have the ability to do, but it was very interesting to see how they dealt with some of those things, such as drones and so on. Our officers have to attend firearms instruction every year, as well as qualification. So we had to increase our cadre of instructors. So we had somebody attend a firearms instructor's course, as well as a force instructor's course, which deals with defensive tactics, handcuffing, the other skills that sometimes empty hand, as well as maybe baton and so on. And then we do drive vehicles under different circumstances. So attending emergency vehicle operations is highly critical. We have to do that at least every 2 years, but we do that every year. 1 year is usually a high-speed course. The next year is more of a vehicle placement slow speed course. Last year it was down at Auburn Raceway. So it was the high-speed year. So it was nice, but it was wet. So couldn't quite get up to the speeds we needed to get up to, but it was very good, very good. You got to learn to drive in the wet also. Legal updates, laws change, as well as we have to make sure that everybody's aware of what the legal updates are. We do a lot of core competency as well, and work on effective communication. Part of our roles as a police officer deals a lot with communicating with the public, whether it's through de-escalation, whether it's through trying to be able to write things and communicate properly, rules and regulations. It's highly important to be able to know how to communicate the different aspects of the public as we go through that process. Historical intersection of race and policing is also one of the ongoing trainings that we do. That's sponsored by the Training Commission, as well as Duty Intervene. We also have what's called a pre-supervisor's course. So all of our field training officers kind of fill the role of a supervisor at times. So sending them to some training of supervision prior to them becoming a supervisor kind of helps a lot in understanding the big picture. Basic Law Enforcement Academy, which we had one person attend the Basic Law Enforcement Academy last year, and it is 5-month training. So they're away at the academy for 5 months. Upon their completion of the academy, they come back to us. We do some advanced trainings we talked about before training. And then we had some individuals attend advanced recognition of impaired drivers. I know that it is a skill that has to truly be practiced a lot. And when we talk about impaired drivers, it's not just under the influence of alcohol. It involves drugs or narcotics or any type of medical issue. And the advanced recognition of impaired drivers, kind of covers some of those topics versus just somebody under the influence of alcohol. And we have to do our first aid CPR, and we also implemented some advanced firearms training last year, which was received well by the officers. Next, please.
Question.
Yes.
Under the first aid CPR, and this is more just Washington, is there sort of an implied a duty to provide care? So if for example, there was a firearm shooting, the officer would act to maintain or stabilize the patient, or similar, you know, if an officer comes upon an overdose, to try to do, you know, obviously with fentanyl, there's some complexity, but in terms of, I was just curious kind of what the expectation is in terms of standards of care.
Our expectation is to render aid as long as the scene is safe.
Okay.
And that's why there are specific regulations regarding if you apply force, there's a higher level of expectation of rendering aid. And the big caveat to that is I have to try to render aid to an individual that I've used force on or somebody else has used force on once the scene is secure. If the scene is still violent in nature, I don't have to put myself in more danger to render aid. But I have to do that evaluation, go through that process.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Chief, question on the training that we saw, it's a great list, thank you. Can we expect the same type of training in 2026?
There'll be, some of those things will be recurring, things will happen, but there'll also be some different levels of classes that occur. We'll have some different supervisor courses that people will attend. There'll also be some mandatory training that's issued by the training commission that has to do with different aspects of community involvement and those type of things. So there will be some changes. There are some things that are very constant, firearms, defensive tactics, driving, all those things that are very basic skills. We have to continue to work on those all the time. Those are kind of what we call low frequency, high risk type situations. I don't necessarily have to be involved in a pursuit, but every day of the week, every day of the year. But if I become involved in that pursuit, I have to have a certain level of skill to be able to kind of limit some of that liability. So there are some of those things that occur. So calls for service, as you can see, this compares 2023 and 24 and 25. As you look at the beginning of the year for this last year, our calls for service were a little higher than last year. Not as high as they were in 2023, but we are starting to climb through that process. If you noted near the end of the year, it still remains relatively equal throughout the year for us, but there are some activities last year that were a little higher. One of the things that contributes to calls for service is, and I'll talk about that later through our presentation, has to do with the number of officers we have on duty, has to do with the actual activity that occurs out there. Sometimes when you have less officers, you have less proactivity out there. And a lot of our calls are very proactive, and we'll cover that as we go through this presentation. But that's kind of where we're at in that aspect. So it kind of gives you an idea how things kind of shift through that process. We still remained relatively consistent throughout the year. As you can see, it didn't really do a big drop off. If you look at the very lighter blue, which is on the far right of each one of those pillars, it did remain relatively constant throughout the year for us, and did drop off a little bit in November. And sometimes winter also has a little bit of an effect on the calls for service. Next, please. So the activity level that we have for top 10 calls of service does remain fairly constant, but there are some changes that go back and forth on the process. Traffic stops were up last year from where the year before. That's kind of important for us here. We do have a lot of complaints regarding traffic. Traffic is one of the highest complaints that we have in the city. So traffic stops is pretty high. And you can also kind of wonder if we were fully staffed, which we are right now, that number would probably be at least probably about 17, maybe 20% higher than it actually is on there. Person contacts moved up the list in last year. And we found that probably we're having a lot more personal contact with individuals out there. Sometimes those are people in need. And sometimes it's just that we're out there trying to make those contacts and see who's actually walking around the town. It's also kind of make those contacts and let them know we're here to help them out. Suspicious activity kind of went down because person contacts went up, but you can see it's still pretty constant, 384 versus 386. But our person contacts went up probably another 40 from that year. COP activity is community oriented policing. So a lot of those have to do with us having the time to spend out in the public, whether we contact businesses, just kind of casual contact, or doing those type of activities. It's gone down from the year previous. A lot of that has to do with some overstaffing and available patrol time or restricted patrol time that we have out there. Follow-ups moved up in the list. We do have a lot of follow-ups and investigations that are complex in nature. And so we do spend a little bit more time in those follow-ups. Directed enforcement is there, as well as 911 hangouts. You can see it's pretty constant. Some of those, the rest of the list, don't change too much. Parking was a little higher this last year than it was the year before. But if you look at traffic offenses, 71 and 71. So, and traffic offenses are those that are actually called into us as a traffic complaint, where maybe a racing vehicle or somebody calls about something that's in progress versus a traffic stop, which is a proactive type enforcement. Questions?
Hey, Chief, on the traffic stops, do you have a sense that those are residents that are involved, or are those people cruising down through 203 that are?
We do stop a number of residents, but the traffic in Duval is very transient. A vast majority of the people we do stop are not actually living in the city of Duval itself. They either live maybe in Duval proper outside of the city, or they're traveling from north to south to Monroe or over to Ribbon. So,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
Can you give an example of some suspicious activity that might be investigated or called upon?
We're out at 3 o'clock in the morning and we're in an area where it might be prone to car prowls or activity out there. And we're driving through the neighborhood and we see an individual that's there. That's suspicious in our minds. If it's an area that has a high volume of incidents. So we go out there and make that contact. Or somebody may actually call and say, hey, I hear this noise in my neighborhood. Can you come up and take a look? And we'll go up and try to evaluate whether that's something going on. Suspicious in nature to the public, sometimes suspicious to us.
Okay.
Yeah, is that?
Yeah, I thought there might be a correlation between suspicious activity and personal contact.
Person contact is usually us trying to make some of those contacts or something that's proactive. But suspicious could be some of those type of things.
Yeah.
Good. Next. So as you look at the calls for service, busiest days, if you look at 2024, first part of the week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday seems to be one of those highest days. But as we look at last year, we're starting to see more of an impact in midweek. Our weekend activities aren't as high here as they are in some other locations, but what we're finding is the activity in Duval, the early part of the week as well as the end of the week, has a little bit of a change. Some of the businesses are open during the first part of the week here in town. We also have people that work modified work schedules that may not necessarily be working those days. And so a lot of some of that activity that we have is business related. Some of that activity is also based on the activity of the individuals that live in town. If they're up and about and active in the community, our council probably go up a little bit more. But if they're more preparing for their work week, staying home, sometimes that doesn't impact our workload as much as people might think. It doesn't become too constant. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about officers and response times. One of the ways to look at officers whether you're fully staffed or not, and it's not the ideal way. I'd much rather look at, the aspect of directed patrol time and undirected patrol time. But one of the things that we always hear in the news is the national average of officers per thousand, as well as the state of Washington. And so if I look back at some of the averages based on population calculations, based on some of the averages of those period of time. In 2014, our department was staffed at about 1.638 officers per thousand. Population grows, staffing levels go down without adding personnel. And so 2019, about 1.5, 2024, 1.4, and at the beginning of this year, about 1.47, still going down. But there's an FTE add that we had mid-year this year, which brings us back up a little bit as we go through that process. It's always flexible based on officers per thousand. And the national average is 2.33. Our state usually averages about 1.6 to 1.8, depending on what type of jurisdiction. Smaller jurisdictions are a little bit more populated by officers than larger jurisdictions. Seattle is very thin compared to that. But that's one thing to kind of think about as we talk about officers per thousand. The higher number you have, the more you're going to have people available to do some of that undirected patrol. And you may have read things in the paper lately, but there was a count every year. They do a count on the number of police officers in our state, and it has gone down dramatically in our state, even from what it was 2 years ago. Part of that is because our state becomes more populated, and when they do the total counts of police officers statewide, last year in the entire state, if you look at all of them, we only gained 68 new officers in our state. So you can imagine if Seattle's down 300 or 400 personnel, a lot of agencies are down in their staffing, which is true in our state. It's very difficult to start to increase those numbers as the population goes. You're always playing catch up as you go through that process. So response time also is related to probably some of our staffing. Priority one, which are in progress calls, like threatening calls, things that involve like assaults, things that involve danger to person. In 2024, the average priority one was 380 minutes and 54 seconds. And in 2025, 5 minutes and 15 seconds. And then in progress calls, non-life threatening calls, such as maybe a theft or a car prowl or some type of property crime. 2024 was about 5 minutes and 8 seconds. In 2025, 5 minutes and 8 seconds. And priority 3 calls, which would be any other call for service. That's the average, 4 minutes and 56 and 5 minutes and 34. Some of the things we find that kind of impact our ability to respond is density and population. There are more cars on the roadway. There's more vehicles we have to get around to get to someplace. There are also times when our officers have to leave a call they're on to respond to a different type of a call. And so when we start talking about those sort of average numbers, there are times that the priority 1 calls where they're a lot quicker, sometimes where they're a lot slower. But 5 minutes, 3.5 minutes, or close to 4 minutes, as well as 5 minutes, almost 5 minutes there. That's pretty average for an agency our size. Redmond has a priority 1 call of about 15 minutes. And they have drone as a first responder, which helps out in that process. They can get a drone on scene probably within 2 minutes to evaluate whether it's something that an officer needs to continue to go fast to or slow down. We don't have that need or that type of a call.
I was curious, and you provided some great data in terms of day of the week, in terms of arrival, sort of the Pareto, looking at that as well as the type of incidents. And I'm not asking for this, so but I'm just curious in your analysis from looking at the city as a heat map. Is there concentrations of area where you see more incidents or more calls. I was also trying to put this into correlation in terms of where the police station is located, in terms of time to destination, even as we look forward in terms of, sighting, but also just even today, coming into Main Street, as you said, and then, if you have to go to North Cherry Valley versus Big Rock, there's a different commute path.
Yeah, we try not to stage ourselves at the station. We try to be out and about, and so when I look at some of these call numbers and the data, a lot of it has to do with going from one side of the city to the other. And if I have to travel from the far north end of the city to the south end of the city, if I'm at the high school, sometimes there's different routes I can go to get there. But sometimes I can't get there except for taking the main roadway. And it does kind of add through that process. There depends on the time of the day too, right? So early in the morning, at night, after rush hour traffic, you can get pretty much any place in the city pretty easily. But if you look at the traffic out here, at rush hour in the afternoon, it's pretty thick out here on 203 and Main Street. And it's tough to kind of get by some of that traffic when you
really have that click the clicker and go on the side.
When you also have traffic islands in the middle of the roadway, sometimes it's tough to get by, right? Usually when we have 3 lanes with a turn lane in the middle, we can get by that and get through. And we always want to make sure we can ride versus not get involved in a collision on the way, right? Doesn't do us any good if we can't make it to that call. So there's a lot of things that go into consideration. Yes.
This is a follow-up to Mayor Pro Tem's question was, in the heat map, do you guys look at, is there certain areas of Duval that are more prone to suspicious activity or prowling, or is it just kind of?
We get more calls from the denser populated area, because there's more eyes in it. And so when you start talking about the older part of town, we don't get as many calls in the older part of town, but usually when the calls happen there, it's something important. We usually get a lot of calls in the southern end where it's all the new housing is in that area. Not necessarily that they're higher type crimes, but we have a lot more people that hear things, right? They hear things and see things and they call us on more on a regular basis. They also have a different expectation, I think, than some of our older residents in town. They often work in a location that has a larger police department. So they look at the aspect of, I want similar services as Redmond, so Redmond they call a lot. They expect to have the police service come by. In town, we still have people that call our police department directly versus calling 911. And that's all times of the day, not just during the daytime. Because they're just used to it. That's what they do. And that's what they're used to. So it's kind of unusual in that aspect. We also have a little different demographics here where I come from. If somebody is a victim of crime, they'll usually pursue charges. Here, they don't. So it has to be something very drastic for people to say, I want to pursue charges. No, I just want this to stop. Just tell them to go away. All those type of things. So you have to really be a victim of something. All right, next please. So staffing is one of the things that I already talked a little bit about. As it says right there, we have 3 positions vacant in, we had 3 positions vacant in 2025. 3 of them were officers. In the last quarter of 2024, we were 7.6 in staffing shortages. That doesn't mean that we had fully deployable officers that period of time. We had some people that were hired in the academy or going through field training. But we were at 7.6%. And at the last quarter of 2025, we're at 15.3 staffing shortages due to extended leaves and some of those people that we hired didn't make it through that process. We have an additional FTE that officer added this year. That was to backfill a sergeant position that will be filled this year. And we hired 1 officer last year. We had, one officer that, didn't make it through training, was hired the year before, at the end of the year, so, 16 exceptional candidates. An exceptional candidate is an officer that has been through the police academy and has a certification for the police academy, but has not, been deployed as a police officer at the agency where they're at. It could be that they didn't make it through their training process there. It could also be that, they have decided that, that's not the agency for them. If they go through. And we have, exceptional candidates and lateral candidates. 11 were interviewed last year, 1 was hired. Unfortunately, that one didn't make it. So, and then, entry officer applications, we had 93. 20 were interviewed and 0 were hired. We went through the process on a number of them through the background process. But, they either chose to take a job at another agency or, during in the background, something came up that they weren't able to be hired. On the good part of this, I have a new entry level officer starting on the 11th. So we're going through this process. Hiring is very, very difficult, not just for us, but for all law enforcement in our state. There are, I couldn't tell you an agency right now that's fully staffed. Everybody has shortages. Everybody is going through this process. There are a lot of people that think they'd be a good cop and probably aren't going to be a good cop. And there's a myriad of reasons why people don't make it to the hiring stage. A lot of that happens in their background. A lot of it happens in the review of their qualifications prior to starting the background. Oftentimes there's something in their background that may be something you can't move forward on, or that they don't disclose at the beginning. It comes up in the background process. And integrity and truthfulness is key to being a police officer. And unfortunately, sometimes people don't explain things, or they don't say things in their past with the aspect that if I tell that to somebody, I'm not going to get the job. But it's more like, if you tell us, we might be able to work through it, because not everybody's perfect in their life as they go forward. But by not telling us, you're omitting information, you're hiding things, and that can be the case. We're also finding that there's a requirement now for individuals to still have those 3 applications if you're on employment. And we're finding that there's a lot of people that are just applying for police officers' jobs to fill that not ask that they have to have. We have had a lot of people out there in recruiting events. We've had a lot of people come through, and we interviewed 3 people yesterday for police officer position. We have 5 more that we're interviewing on Thursday. As we go through that, it's an ongoing process. We have changed our background process here since I got here to probably speed up the process, as well as to look at things that we might want to probably weed out before we get there. It does cost money to do backgrounds. It's very expensive. And sometimes you try to spend your money where you have a high likelihood of reaching. So that's it. Yes.
Who is, I know for a smaller agency, like who is actually the ones interviewing and doing the backgrounding? Is it active duty officers, or do you use like admin staff? Just curious.
Yes, all the above.
Okay.
And so we do have seasoned officers that do a lot of the interviewing, but that's just one step in the process, right? And there's some very scripted questions that they have to ask to make sure they comply with HR type requirements. There's certain things we can't ask. And once that happens, if they get through that process and pass what's called the moral board, then they go to a more of a one-on-one interview with my lieutenant down there. And it's a more detailed interview where they fill out a 30-page questionnaire that covers all sorts of activity, relatives, friends, work history, any type of activity, whether it's criminal tickets, those type of things that they have out there. And then we look at that and work through that process, make sure that we get all the things answered we need to. 'Cause sometimes when people fill out that questionnaire, they've never done it before. And so they might give a really minimal answer. And so that's our opportunity to kind of nail them down and get all the information we need to and kind of get all the facts. Sometimes people make it past that process. And sometimes they don't. Because there may be something they disclose at that very time that we can't move past. Or sometimes it's they just don't follow through. And then the next process we go from that point is polygraph examination. They do a background, which is pretty in-depth. It takes about a month and a half to do a background. And then they'll do, once that passes, they pass their background and they look like they're gonna be a good candidate for our agency, then they get to meet with me. And I get to ask them all the questions to see how they fit in with the agency, see what their future's like. I'm the dad, I gotta make sure that if they're gonna be part of my family, I've gotta have some of those questions that I ask. And if I believe that that person's gonna make our agency better and be a good fit for our agency. And they meet all those qualifications that I'm looking for, somebody that's going to be engaged in the community as well. Then I give them what's called a conditional offer. And once that conditional offer is accepted by them, they do a psychological and a medical examination. And if they pass those, then I give them what's called an unconditional offer. And they can either accept or not. And if they accept, then we talk about a hiring date, bring them on board and get them going for the academy if they're an entry level, or if they're a lateral, somebody with experience, then we can start them on their field training pretty quickly. So it's a long process. There have been probably 6 or 7 people that we've been in competition with other agencies about. That some of them have taken other jobs with other agencies. Some agency that might have maybe a little higher pay may also have different opportunities. And sometimes I give them some fatherly advice and they make their own choices. And I've had a few come back to us saying, hey, I think I made a mistake. Can I come back here? And unfortunately, sometimes they have some other baggage in their background after that, as we go through that. So it's a long process as we go through that. But we're trying to get those positions filled. Next, please. This kind of tells you a little bit about our agency. I know it's difficult to see up there, but on the far left, outlined by red, is our school resource officer, Officer Maeda. He is currently at the school, at the high school. And up till this last year, it was a levy funded position. I know that there's going to be some discussion we have later on regarding where we go from there. But he is still at the high school and is a very crucial position for our agency, our city, even though a large number of the attendees at the school aren't necessarily from the city limits of Duval. We do have a high responsibility to make sure it's a safe environment for learning. And so to go through that process. If you look on that, we have 1, 2, 3 vacant positions and 1 officer that's on extended medical leave. And one of those 3 vacant positions that we have there is technically a backfill for a sergeant that will be promoted later on this year. Not necessarily that we're going to have a sergeant and a new officer, but we're going to promote a sergeant from within and backfill that position with a new officer. So our FTE numbers will only increase by 1 mid-year as they go through that process. Yes.
Are you doing that for like the state sergeant's test and all of that, or how are you kind of dictating?
Agencies have the ability to operate their tests as they see fit. Some do a test internally, some do a test with a number of corporations. And we utilize a company called Public Safety Testing that does a lot of promotional examination statewide. They also have some of that credibility behind them to show that they're using industry standards to make sure that the testing is viable and credible and that it also eliminates a good high percentage of people, you know, testing that, right? It eliminates some of those responses that people have when they say it wasn't a fair process. That's the company that we'll be using for the testing process. They do a lot of commercial testing in the area. So it's usually a one-day test that can cover myriad topics such as practical exercises as well as hypotheticals and so on to make sure that they cover a lot of those things.
And then the rest is just like interviews with you or other stuff, or do you do other police chiefs come over and interview as well
For
for the sergeant? I know.
we do have the panel that interviews and is involved in that testing process. Usually has to be of that rank or higher, and usually it has to be a senior sergeant to do that interview. We don't want to have a new sergeant. We want to have somebody that is looking for somebody that's been in that position for a while, knows the ins and outs, and we also have what's called a subject matter expert, somebody from within our agency, that's my lieutenant, that deals with questionable questions. You know, the panel might say, hey, your candidate said this. Is that really how you do it here or not? And we can have those questions to kind of answer that, make sure it's correct. But it's a very stressful process for the applicant.
Yeah, my sister is a police sergeant. My dad's retired now. My brother-in-law is a police officer, all on the same ball, so very familiar with their process.
Yeah, public safety actually does a lot of the testing for region. There's some agencies that don't. I mean, Everett has their own process. Seattle has their own process. But for the most part, there's some type of testing company that comes in and does that. So. Next, please. So here's some of the initiative and projects that we're looking at for this year. We're going to be continuously hiring. We have a process in place that allows us to do what's called continuous testing. One of the things that we did to kind of speed up the process is we will probably be calling somebody within a week of their test scores being posted on our testing website. And oftentimes that's important because there are times when people take a test to be a police officer and they don't hear for weeks. And so we try to get them in within a week of them testing. One of the things that kind of is a hook for us getting somebody to think about Duval is Duval. Whether they come in and they see the town, they see what it looks like. We have a lot of discussions about the demographics of the area, the type of law enforcement it is, but we also get them out on a ride along with some of our officers and we actually get to kind of see what we do on a daily basis and the interaction we have. It's one of those communities that everybody waves with all their fingers. It says hi to you. And we talk about the support we get from council as well as the public when we have our events in town, as well as we talk about for financial aspects of making sure that our agency is supported. One of the last things I did with the person that starts in 11th, I took him down to Big Rock. And we talked about a piece of property down there. And those are always important things to kind of show that there's a future here in our agency. So it's kind of nice to kind of talk about those things. We're developing a recruiting video. There's 2 videos that we're planning on doing on about a 60-second video that goes on the testing website. So people can kind of see a little bit about Duval. Because when I go to those testing sites, and I went to it probably 2 weeks ago on a Sunday, and I talked to the people there, and some of them they kind of go, "Where's Duval?" You know, I'm only thinking about testing in Snohomish County, and I want to apply for those agencies, and I go, "We're only 8 miles south of Snow County, so come on out." And usually we get to kind of say, "All right, I might think about it," as I go through that. But when I was up in Marysville, we had people that came up from Kent and Port Seattle as recruiters for their agencies, and a lot of people up there didn't want to go down that direction. So it's kind of interesting to kind of have those conversations, talk about it. Once they learn a little bit about the city, it works really well. But we're gonna do a larger video, probably about a 2 minute, minute and a half, 2 minute video that's gonna go on our website for recruiting. We have some new hires that will be going through field training. And one of them will be hopefully the person that starts on the 11th. They'll be in the academy and pulling it out near the end of this year. We have another person that's in the Air National Guard that's going through training in Mississippi right now. Once she returns from Mississippi, we've got a couple things to button up on her background, and we'll probably hire her about mid-year. And she'll still have to go to the academy, but we're trying to do what we can to get things on the path. It's interesting to kind of communicate with somebody in the military, because I talked to somebody out here that's not in the military, and I can give them a call and like the military don't always have that luxury. It's usually leave them a message and they'll return a call in a couple of weeks. So go through that. Technology upgrades. We have a number of computers that were tablets before that can't be upgraded to our current software. So we've had to do some technology upgrades to bring on some ruggedized laptops that will go on the vehicles, and as well as we're doing a change to a different ticketing and collision software as required by the state. So there's a little bit of training we have to do to go through that. It's a little bit more of a challenge for some of our officers to work through. But once you use it a lot, you'll figure that out. We're gonna have more advanced in-house and in-service training. One of the reasons why we had some of those instructor classes later this last year is trying to develop some of that cadre so we can do some things internally, as well as to make sure they kind of fit some of our needs that are consistent with what's taught during this throughout the state. We talked about developing a new mission and value statement. If I ask my officers what the mission statement is of the Duval Police Department right now, I don't think they're gonna be able to, because they don't have a lot of ownership in that, and doesn't mean that it's wrong. Just means that it doesn't hit home for them. And sometimes it just becomes words on paper. Or when I start talking about values are always pretty consistent. If you ask somebody, what do you want in a police department? What do you want in values? Honesty, truthfulness, honor, all those service, duty, all those things are very consistent no matter what. But we're talking about doing and developing a new mission statement. We'll talk more about that maybe on the 13th there. When you're down for and promotion of a new sergeant, we talked about that. Contract negotiations for our officers is this year. So it's going to take a little bit of work. There's some things in their current contract that probably needs to be updated. So it's going to be a little bit of a process, but we'll get through it this year. I still have my fingers crossed we're become fully staffed. Fortunately, probably fully staffed may not mean fully operational. It usually takes probably about 8 to 12 months to bring a new officer on the line and get them solo. So it does take some time to go through that process. Our evidence right now is done by pen and paper and ledger. We're in the process of going to a digital evidence processing. We are partners of the Redmond Police Department, and we've been working with them to go through this process. They aren't even to that stage yet. So we will probably be the first agency that they're working with that'll get to that stage. It's going to take a little bit of work, but we're going to get there. And develop a 5-year strategic plan. It's important for our agency to have more than just looking at the area. They've become pretty stable down there right now. A 5-year plan is highly important for us to make sure we have something to kind of look at for the long term and not just work on the things that are happening right now. As we go through it. When I put down our evaluate building lifespan, I know that there's a lot of discussion about new department and working through that process, but it's still going to probably take some time, even if we said today to build a new department. And there are things in our building now that are failing on a pretty regular basis. We have one heat exchanger or heat pump that is not functioning at all and had to be replaced. That's about $20,000 to $25,000 to replace that, which is not budgeted. So we'll have to start looking at different things. there are also some other things that are just wearing out. We'll do our best to kind of get through it. Let's go through that, but sometimes there's some things in our building that I know that if we're there 2 to maybe 2.5 more years, that there's gonna have to be some severe thoughts about certain things. If we're gonna be there a little bit longer. And I know we had about 3 years ago, we had a remodel. And there are also some things that probably weren't done to current standards within that remodel, but we're trying to make things do. So a lot of evaluation that we have to go through when we go through that process. And I talked a little bit about the implementing the new technique software, as well as we're going to continue to do some leadership development, especially if we bring in a new sergeant. We want to make sure that we continue to develop our leaders. That is one of the areas that if you don't have continual leadership development or training for your leaders, that oftentimes there's a big liability process that goes into that. And so it's important for us to continue that leadership. And my goal is by the end of this year to become what's called a trilogy agency, which means that all of our supervisors have reached a certain level of leadership training, become what's called a trilogy agency, which shows that you have some type of honor and role in making sure that your leaders are the best training you can in your agency.
A quick question.
Yep.
On
Would you
the,
like to go back?
oh, please, yeah, on the digital evidence processing, I'm trying to understand that. Can you explain how we move from paper to digital, and are we budgeted for that new process?
Yeah, we are. It is something that we have the equipment. We've had the equipment for probably, it was there when I got there.
Yeah.
It was in a box. It's on a shelf someplace. And so the way it had been done, if there's actually a ledger book, that when somebody puts something into our evidence, person makes a notation on the ledger and pen and paper. And then every time it's moved out, if it goes to the lab or something else, they have to also note it. With when you start talking about digital, you can start adding barcodes, you can scan it in, scan it out. And it's easier for doing inventory tracking purposes.
Yeah.
One of the things I found when I got out there is you really want to, one thing that's going to get a chief fired pretty quick is having some issues with your evidence room. And there were some issues, not necessarily things that would get me fired, but organization was very poor. There were a large volume of items that could have been destroyed or gotten rid of. But there are also some items that may have been destroyed in the past and missed on the ledger, or moved from one spot to another, and it shows it's here on the ledger, but it's actually over here. So being able to have the ability to put a barcode on a piece of evidence as well as scan it and track it into your inventory is a lot easier. It's more accurate.
Sounds great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Just curious, what are some of the typical items you might have in your evidence locker?
Years ago, it used to be heavy in narcotics, a lot of drugs, those type of things. But we might have evidence such as clothing. We might have evidence such as items that have been found property. We may have evidence that has been sent to the lab to be tested. Maybe a fingerprint has been taken off of that evidence. Relatively small, but we do have a large area where we've got a couple of generators that might have been located. We have a copy machine that is in our evidence room that is not necessarily evidence, but there's a certain requirement for us to collect those if somebody has found one. So there's certain things that we just have to maintain. Wheels on tires, bicycles, heavy equipment. So we're talking steel saws, those type of things that we have, as well as tools that might be there. So it's a pretty good hodgepodge. We still have things such as jewelry, cash. We still have narcotics, a large number of weapons. Firearms is a big amount of our evidence room. Because we're required to, if somebody wants to turn in a weapon, we're required to take it by law. And some of those are somebody's deceased in the family and they go, I want to get this out of my house, and they drop it off to us, and we have to hold on to it for a certain period of time, and then we can destroy it. We have to melt those things down. We don't sell them off, and so that's one thing. Or we may have a firearm that was turned over us based on a court order. Somebody's not allowed to have firearms or weapons, and they have to turn it into a law enforcement agency. And we just happen to be the agency that's top by.
Yes.
And I'm kind of sort of looking ahead, and I know sort of in the past you identified some deficiencies sort of across the department or the agency. I'm just curious, looking forward to sort of the end of year budgeting process, or actually, I guess it will start before the end of the year. We'll kind of start that now. I was curious from the police department's perspective. I'm sure you still have some of those gaps, whether it was, I think in the past, updating the firearms, there was sometimes vehicles or safety equipment, barricade, all types of things. But in terms of the budget, you typically bring back to council essentially a line item for a set of funds, and there's some discretion in terms of how that's allocated, or do you typically, because I couldn't recall that we went to this level of detail last time, or if it's more granular in terms of that you've identified specific capital needs for the department that you would then bring to the attention of the council that we could then
I did identify specific things that were brought to the council, and we're in a specific line on such as small tools, but it was very specified out, such as an example might be upgrading some rifles that we have. Specified a certain number of rifles and put that in there to kind of show that that's within that supply area that we have. There are some other areas that we were deficient in. We kind of moved things up. Training was very limited, so the budget for training was increased a little bit to allow us to meet some of those needs. But we always have to buy some ammo. But the training we have is very deficient. And so in order to train, you need to have bullets and ammo. So we increase that. But there's certain areas, such as one of the things that we added this last year is ballistic plates for officers. That's a very specific item that is listed in there. And if I was to look at the budget, I can see that I have so much allotted for ballistic plates. And then for rifles, I have so much allotted for rifles and so on. And there are some other things such as breaching tools, less lethal, those type of things that were also there, very specific, but falls into the category of supplies and tools that we have. So
I'm assuming you go through sort of an evaluation and reprioritization sort of on an annual basis, and then we obviously do the biannual plan.
And there are certain things that have a lifespan. Ballistic vest has a 5-year lifespan. So we have to continually buy those things every 5 years for an individual. Fortunately, we don't try to do it all at once. Usually it's done throughout their lifespan that they have. So we may have 3 vests that we have to buy this year, maybe a couple more next year, and so on. So those are certain lifespans that we have. We've implemented a plan so that we don't have to buy all the rifles at once. That say we buy 3 this year, 3 next year, start that rotation through to kind of lessen the impact on the budget as we go through that process. And patrol cars have a certain lifespan that they have. We have to make sure that we continue to do that, because there's a certain period of time that a vehicle is no longer insurable by WCIA based on its lifespan. But we try to utilize the equipment appropriately. Sometimes we can carry some equipment over, sometimes we can't. What we found, and I found throughout my career, my long career, is that electronics have a certain lifespan. And if you continue to put a certain light bar through each car, sooner or later the light bar fails, or the equipment starts to fail. So there's a specific lifespan that you have to kind of be aware of. And so we've evaluated a lot of that. And I think that's it's been a learning process for a number of them down there. because they never thought about the long range planning for certain types of equipment. It's just kind of like, well, the brakes will buy a new one, or we'll continue to go forward. Now it's kind of like, let's set the agency up for long term and build those things.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? Chief?
Chief, on your, those are some great projects. I like your list of projects on there. I was curious. Do you think you'll be able to get to all those? And if you don't, that's okay. But which ones are on your, I gotta have?
Gotta have hope. I gotta have hope that I look through those things.
And because of the digital processing, the new ticketing system, they sound pretty important. They sound.
We're already in the process of a number of those things right now. The digital ticketing, the ticketing system, our officers have been through the training, last 2 weeks. Is now starting to be used by the officers. So some of those things are ongoing right now and working through that process. So I don't like to sit on my hands. I like to be busy. And so as we work through this process, and I think that the officers also want to be involved with improving the agency and building upon it. So there are some things that certain officers are going to take on, they're better at, they're probably high at, and we divide and conquer and go forward and make things happen.
Since this is my first one, do you come back every quarter and kind of give us an update on where these are at? Or some just fell off because they don't make sense anymore? Or do we just see it once a year?
Sometimes when we get to that point, it doesn't happen. Well, once a year is kind of where we're at, but I think we kind of talk about that as we go through. I'd probably talk to the mayor a little bit more of where we want to be, but sometimes when you look at things in a quarter, I can talk about projects, but some of the stats won't really mean a lot until you see at the end of the year.
Well, if we can help you in any way,
Yeah.
let us know sooner. than
Appreciate
later.
it. I'm here to make your job easier when you go out there in the public.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Chief. Sure.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Do we have any items with the board? If not,
I was out last meeting, so I had a chance to review the recording from the 217 meeting. I don't have any concerns or questions about the meeting. I'm fine with it. Oh, by the way, whoever's doing the notes, minutes, fabulous job. Whoever's doing the minutes. So kudos. I mean, they're great minutes. I love them. But going back to the last meeting, I was watching it online, and now there's no ads and commercials popping up when I'm watching the recording. So I think maybe I'm looking at the administrator, did we buy like the Google YouTube account? Because, oh, no, okay. It was really enjoyable to watch the whole recording and not have these commercials pop up every 2 to 11 minutes.
I didn't know there were ads there. We put it as not monetized so that there are no.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's gonna go a long way because there were some ads last year that talked about birth control. And I think there's something about holsters for guns. I was like, I don't know if we're getting monetized for those. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah, no, none of them are monetized.
Okay.
So it's a setting that we always have.
Yeah, that's a great setting. I would highly recommend we just leave that setting checked. And
Okay.
maybe we'll get more viewers now that they don't have to keep it right. One other thing for the mayor, it's been about a month since we sent the letter to executive Galley, and I was curious if we heard anything back, and if not, maybe what was our next steps to having them come out and meet with us and talk about some of our housing growth challenges and all that. Have we heard any?
Sort of, yes. City Administrator McNabb has an answer.
So the new executive has created these liaison officers. And we have one, her name is Angela. She's the, have to look at her exact title, East King County Government Support Liaison. That's a title. And she offered opportunities for all the cities to meet with her. So I met with her about 3 weeks ago. We put together an itinerary for the new executive to come to Duval to have lunch at one of our restaurants, meet with some nonprofits, meet with the city, go out to Duval Park, take a walk around. I'm going to recommend that they bring boots. Visit our wastewater treatment plant, see our facilities so they can understand the state of the police department, the state of City Hall. I'm meeting with her again on Friday to kind of solidify some of those plans and try to start getting it date.
Beautiful, that's great. Good news, thank you.
And so with that, I don't know if we want to segue based on the length of your mayor's report or the city administrator's report. We could start with either one of those. We have a little bit of time before. we need
Either's
to take
fine.
a break.
Mine's not too long, so I could try to knock it out and then we go on to yours if you want.
Yeah, mine isn't that long this week either.
Okay, so I attended the monthly PSRC Growth Management Planning Board meeting. That's one of the committees I serve on. We recommended certification of comprehensive plans for Puyallup and Renton. We also discussed redesignation of regional growth centers and certification of regional growth center sub-area plans. Those don't affect us. Duval will never have one of those, but it was really interesting because something came up where we waited. It's tabled. We're gonna get a little more information, but there was like one criteria such as size that was getting red flagged for every single jurisdiction applying for them. And so my question was, at what point do you reevaluate the criteria? You know, at what point is maybe that the problem and not what the jurisdiction is doing to try and, you know, make sure it fits with the designation. So there will be more on that, but I thought that whole process was really interesting. Let's see. Oh, and then we had a presentation of the results of the housing incentives and tools survey. That had some interesting things in it. I can look for a link and send it to you all if you want to look at that.
Is that a survey that went out to just our city, or is that the survey?
No, it was like a regional, yeah, it was a bigger one, but they had some specialized feedback from different areas. I also attended the Raging River Recovery Center ribbon cutting. That was with the Snoqualmie tribe. And that's a center, so it's in Snoqualmie, in downtown Snoqualmie, and they provide services for Native and community members, which include chemical dependency assessments, deferred prosecutions, intensive outpatient aftercare, relapse prevention, family counseling, and a lot more. But it was a really beautiful facility. It's great to have something a little closer for those types of services, and I'm just really happy for the tribe. I had my first mayor meetup at CC's, and City Administrator McNabb joined me. We had some participants that have come to in the past council chats, and they looked familiar, and they were just great talking about potholes and some of the usual suspects of things that come up in a city. And then also had someone stop by that was just talking about the importance of support for community events and how much they appreciate the city's support of those events in our community. Hopefully, clicked out. And I'm going to be having those monthly for the most part. I think I'll keep those going. I have the next few scheduled out. I attended the FCA board retreat where we reviewed FCA's mission, vision, and values, guiding principles, and we also worked on identifying strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for FCA. And we worked through policy priority lists as well as operational priority list. And I will tell you that some of the things that floated to the top were local versus regional housing. I'm trying to think, and not having like a one size fits all type of approach to policies with different cities. And then just this morning, I attended the FCA North Mayor's meeting, and there was a lot of discussion about the King County Transportation Benefit District, sales tax coming, which I'm not sure when they'll bring that forward, but it's kind of feeling like this year probably. And then further in the future, there's some kind of King County housing levy that's going to be coming forward, but it's very vague at this point. So that's why SCA is getting involved in the conversation now. So it's hard to discuss something that is so vague and doesn't have a lot of parameters to it yet, but it is important to be there early on at that table, especially since, you know, what I keep trying to advocate for is that every city is different. Some cities want and need more affordable housing, and some just need more market rate housing and have completely different needs for their area. So I'll be interested to see how that develops and how that would affect us. So yeah, that's all I had. Any questions for me? Oh, okay. Did you want to?
I think we can get through the city administrator report in 5 minutes. Yeah. And preview, I know it starts with Public Works. So I will turn it over to our city engineer and Deputy Public Works Director, Larissa.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. Public Works crew's been busy doing a lot of kind of seemingly random things, but they all matter. So if you want to go to the next slide, the pictures tell 1,000 words. So we got the batting cages up at the Big Rock Ball Field. They're permitted, they're inspected, constructed. I don't believe they're done yet. They haven't been final, but we've been working on those, so that's really exciting. Next slide. And then the parks crew did a lot of trash removal out of the ravine adjacent to Taylor Park, that Co-Clemens Creek area. There was we've had complaints over the years called in with just like random junk and stuff back there and everything, but it was over 300 pounds of material. So they did a really good job getting that stuff up that hill. Next slide.
Yeah, that's illegal, right, to be dumping trash back there?
Yes, yes, very much.
If I see that, I could call Chief and his team, right? Sure.
Yes.
Curious.
Be checking when they ask, you know,
Yeah.
take a picture.
Yeah, non-emergency 911.
Just check.
There's just a couple more pictures of the guys working. There was tires, parts of I think couches and a recliner and stuff down there. So it was a lot of random stuff. It looks really nice. They did a really good job. So we wanted to highlight that. Next slide. And the roof down at the Taylor Landing has gone up. I think they put all the finishing touches on it. We may or may not talk about gutters. But that's a decision for another day. Next slide.
It looks really nice. I went by.
It does look great. They did a really good job. And this is a picture of our friends at Ziply. They hit one of our they hit our water main in 272nd, just right there. It's like the northern part of Parkwood and right below the mobile home park. So yeah, they drilled right through the bottom of it. Approximately 9,000 gallons of water loss. With alarms and everything, our telemetry was working, so we had alarms and everything from the 2.2 and all that stuff. So that was kind of an exercise in emergencies. They were kicked out last Monday because then they hit a meter setter in Casper Heights on 140th Court. So that's this new policy that City Administrator McNabb and Director Laniszewski worked on, just because it seems like they're pushing really hard and they're hitting stuff. Yes.
Quick question, you know, I know they're charged for time and materials, and I think I asked the city administrator that question before about, you know, where we see sidewalk cut through and then there's a temporary asphalt overlay and then they go back and do that. For things like the 90,000 gallons, do
Yes.
they actually pay for the cost of the water that we would charge in terms of the, because that's obviously revenue. We purchase the water and then we
Yes.
resell it.
It can be something that we've included. I'm honestly not sure if that was something Stephanie, our associate city engineer, now she has been working on the invoice for that. We haven't finalized the invoice because we also wanted to include the meter setter that happened the following week. But I can double check. And it's,
So I just curious.
it's it would be at the wholesale cost, and then it didn't go through a meter. But yes, the big important part of it for our numbers too is and making sure that we account in our water loss. For our reporting, but yes, I can look and make sure that that gets out there invoice. Next slide. This is the fix. So the crew got in there and did a great job, shut it down and got it fixed with the repair bands and a little section of ductile iron. Next slide. So this is kind of just coming on the horizon. Adjacent to Taylor's Ridge on Northeast 150th, there on the left side of the road, all of those maples. The HOA came in to the planning department with a tree removal permit. They're dead, disease, dying. There's root problems. It's also the species that's within the development in the neighborhood, and so they've done tree removal requests and replacement. But all of the trees on that side are going to be removed. So I'm hoping that we can work with planning and the HOA to get a plan to do some replacement. And I don't know if that means that we have them get the entire tree out and plant it back there, or we go in between, because that's what we've done in other areas where we've had kind of problem trees. We just cut the tree down and zip out the trunk and put it right next to it. So that this is just a coming, because I feel like once the trees start to cut down, we may get.
Yes, prepare yourself for the
Some
conversation.
questions and conversations, yes.
I assume they had like an arborist. come
Yes,
out.
there's our risk report that spoke
I-
to the root disease and the.
I also sent on our HOA and we've had arborists come out and they've pretty much told us, tell us what you want it to say. So I don't know.
We do get it peer reviewed.
Okay.
So we have a third part, we have our on-call arborist that peer reviews. So, yes,
Yeah.
For something
Yeah.
as significant
Yeah,
as
it's
this, we would have it
flagging.
peer reviewed.
yeah.
But kind of, yeah.
And we know that historically in the neighborhood, this species of trees, for whatever reason, is really susceptible to these diseases. So yes, if they're dangerous, cutting them down is great. Planting them back is what's really important. And not on this slide though, but we have been talking, I had talked to the crew about it. Our streets lead is, we're probably gonna be looking at, our trees along Main Street. Looking at cycling through those trees because they've kind of gotten to a place of maturity with the tree grapes. The pits are only so big, all of the canopy and everything. So we'll probably be coming and talking about what that's gonna look like, because it will be a little bit of a shock, having the trees on Main Street get replaced, but that's also to be determined with our street tree.
Do we know if the trees are the same across the street over here and that we're seeing that the same disease is happening on the other side of that street?
I don't know what species is on the other side. They were not included because only the trees adjacent to the Taylor's Ridge are the homeowner's responsibility, the homeowners association
Yeah.
responsibility. So I didn't look across the street. But I'm sure our arborist would.
The reason why I ask is that I am the homeowner on the other side of that street.
Yeah.
Myself and Councilman Schaefer are on the
Yeah.
other side of that
Yes.
street, so that's interesting. Okay, because those trees were blooming and they were flowering and they were fall color leaves, several months ago. So I'm surprised to hear that they are all suffering from root disease.
Yes, they are beautiful trees. And that's again why we wanted to bring this up, is because some people may have some to say.
Big feelings.
Yes, big deal. And I think that's the last thing.
Okay, I'll hand it over to our city clerk.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, John Botero, City Clerk. So our Human Services grant will close this coming Monday. We've received 3 applications so far. After the time closes, after the deadline, I should say, I'll reach out to all the members of the subcommittee to schedule a time to take a look at the applications we received, grade them, and talk about the awards and finalize all the details. As a reminder, this will be the last time I remind everyone. Sorry, I know I sound sometimes like a broken record. Jurassic Parliament training will take place on March 14th here at the Visitor Center, starting at 8:30. If you want to come in, we're gonna have some coffee and pastries and the like. And we're gonna we'll do our best to leave by 1-ish so that those who want to attend the holy event can do so. So we'll try to keep it as brief as possible. And
I should add, for the holy event, we did hear from Senator Dingrat's office, and she's going to come to the holy event.
Hey, John, is the Jurassic Parliament, is that virtual as well or just in person?
no, I'm afraid that one will be in person only. And lastly, the council retreat will be on the 28th. I believe you all received invitations. That's going to be at the depot. It starts at 8:30. So if you did not receive that meeting invite, please let me know. I'm more than happy to send it over. An agenda and the material for it will be available closer to the time of the retreat. And that's about it for me. Thank you very much.
All right, well, good evening, everyone. Cynthia McNabb, City Administrator. So couple updates. So our recruitment is open for the Parks Advisory Commission. We've received 1 application already. So once we get some mass of applications, we'll bring it back to council for approval after we go through an interview process with the mayor. We have our first Duval Connect administration newsletter. It's ready. We've worked on it. We're still working out the kinks to get it distributed through Civic Send, which is our website. So we'll be advertising how to get on the distribution list more broadly. You can sign up for notifications on our website. It's right on the front page. It's the button that says notify me. So once we figure out all the distribution issues, that will be going out to the community. It's just an email. So you don't have to go to our website. You don't have to go to Facebook. You don't have to go to an app. They'll just get an email. This isn't in order, but this is what it looks like. So it begins with this bottom left, starts with the mayor's message. Then it goes to the city council update. So John is helpfully grabbing all of the city council updates and we're putting them in narrative form. And then here on the bottom right, it's just the voting for all of the agenda bills so that the public can see all the agenda bills, all of the voting. And then the final paragraph there under council report says, if you want more on any of these agenda items, please go to our website. There's a city administrator report. So essentially what we're doing is we're taking information that we relay either in bullet points or kind of pictures from the city administrator report, putting it in narrative form, and then sending this out to the community. So we'll be doing it after the second meeting of every month as a monthly update to the community of what happens in the council meetings. Took a little doing, we're still working it out, but it's a cool feature. It works through our website. So once we get it perfected, I think it'll be a nice communication tool for the public.
I did.
Did you receive it?
Alriady somehow, I don't
Oh,
know
good.
where.
Yeah,
but-
it's 324 people.
Okay.
I couldn't figure out where it's now landed on our website.
Okay.
So some people got it, but I today I spent like 20 minutes figuring out where it exists so I could put a Facebook message out. I haven't figured it out yet. It's kind of in a phantom land right now, but we'll get it worked out. But I'm glad, yeah. The metrics on the back end of the website said it went to 320 people.
Do you know who opens it? Like some direct messaging also, so you can tell like, 50% of the people.
Yeah.
actually open it.
Yeah, our dashboard on the back end of the website also shows how many people have opened it.
Is this different than the newsletter that goes out in the utilities bill?
It is. So this is more designed to capture what happens at these meetings in an easily digestible form for community members that don't want to go back and watch the videos or attend council meetings. They can see what happened in the council meeting through this. Trying not to recreate information or too much work. It ended up being quite a bit of work, but now that we figured it out, I think it'll be a useful communication tool. We had back in November, December, quite a few information requests that asked for things that we wouldn't put together through an information request, like calculate the voting records for all the council members or something like this. This is our way to respond to what we heard from the community about just getting more information in different ways. So.
Oh, I was gonna add for council members that the mayor's message and the utility bill is more like a narrative type thing that I write. And then this is actually the bulleted list, like my mayor's reports from the meeting. So it's more of like an action based, like here's what I've been doing, here's what council's been doing type thing. So yeah.
Next slide. I have a couple more. So the SCA has developed a small cities work group. Staff from small cities, so it's cities under 10,000 in the area, have already started meeting. They want to have quarterly meetings and we need one elected leader to participate in those quarterly meetings to talk specifically about issues that small cities deal with. Right now, the staff portion of it, so it's myself and city administrators and managers from all of the small cities have largely been focused on like growth targets and housing policy. But generally a way to do knowledge sharing, collaboration, work together on local and regional issues. So if anyone is interested, please let me know. And we can have you work on that work group. It's the electeds from all of the small cities will meet on a quarterly basis, along with my peers together to talk about specific small city issues. I'm working on preparing summer internship opportunities for high school students. That advertisement will be out mid-month. It'll largely be focused on events and marketing. So asking students, to do small videos or pictures to support the city. And then I have begun pricing the cost of barricades for that expanded liquor access. If we were to purchase just 2 blocks of it to create an open zone along Main Street, if the city were to incur that cost, it's about $13,000. So that's just the price for these 2 blocks right here. So I just wanted, as we start talking about it, this would be unbudgeted costs. And so I think we do need to start evaluating whether or not we would get $13,000 in economic development revenue for our businesses to support. And again, this is just 2 blocks of those barricades that would be needed. So food for thought for later. Yes,
Can we rent those or do we have to buy them? And,
we're pricing rental. Yeah. We haven't found anyone who rents exactly what we need. So we're still looking. Director Leshevsky is looking into it. Yeah. Next slide. I think that might be it. Yes, happy to answer any other questions though.
Can we make them in our garage?
The public works team is very talented, but that might be quite.
I was thinking more of my garage. Yeah, for the class.
I'm sure there's enough that issue there, we're telling them the same issue, we'd have to work there. Any questions? All right, we can hold if there's any council reports to the main meeting, give us a couple of minutes for a break. So I am gonna call the committee of the whole workshop to close at 6:58 PM.
I'll call to order the city council meeting at 7:05. And first up, we have Troop 41292. They will lead us in the flag salute. So everyone please rise. Great, thank you. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Mayor McHenry,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer,
Here.
Councilmember Owen,
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Kozlowski,
Here.
Councilmember Supple,
Here.
Councilmember Wiggins,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
All right. Yes, we did have one absence tonight. Councilmember Hernandez is sick this evening. So would council want to add an excusal to that absence to the consent agenda?
Yes. Sure.
Okay. So if there are no objections, we'll add that. And then is there a motion, any other additions or corrections to the agenda? And if not, I'd love a motion for adoption of the council agenda.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve tonight's agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes and the agenda is adopted. So next up, we have two proclamations tonight. And then after we read this, I think we definitely, of course, still need to do a photo op, right? Got lots of steps here. Okay. So, whereas on March 12th, 1912, Girl Scouts of the USA was founded by Juliet Gordon Lowe with a bold vision to build girls of courage, confidence, and character who make the world a better place. And whereas for more than a century, Girl Scouts have strengthened communities across the nation through leadership, service, entrepreneurship, and environmental stewardship. And whereas Girl Scouts in Duval continue this proud tradition by learning practical skills, exploring the outdoors, serving neighbors, and growing into thoughtful, engaged residents who lead with empathy and integrity. And whereas Troop 41292 exemplifies the very best of the Girl Scout promise and law through its dedication to community service, teamwork, and personal growth, demonstrating that even the smallest acts of kindness can create a meaningful change. And whereas members and volunteers of Troop 41292 have given their time and talents to strengthen the fabric of our city by building friendships, supporting local causes, and inspiring others through their leadership. And whereas today's Girl Scouts are a part of a global movement that encourages girls to dream big, embrace innovation, and take active roles in shaping their communities and the world. Their leadership today reflects the enduring impact of women and girls who have paved the way in civic, cultural, and environmental spheres. And whereas the city of Duval recognizes that today's Girl Scouts are tomorrow's leaders, innovators, public servants, educators, entrepreneurs, and community advocates whose impact will shape our shared future. Now, therefore, I, Amy McHenry, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim March 12th, 2026 as Girl Scouts Day. In the City of Duval, I encourage all residents to celebrate the achievements of Girl Scouts everywhere, especially recognizing and commending the outstanding young leaders of Troop 41292. May we honor their commitment to service, their courage to try new things, and their confidence to lead with heart. Together, we celebrate their contributions and reaffirm our support for programs that empower girls to discover their strengths and make a lasting difference in our community. So thank you all very much. And we have a copy of our proclamation for you all. There you go. And if council wants to come up, we can take a photo with this troop. We can all, is this okay? Who's taking this? Oh, are we good here? Like just fill in? Yeah, okay. Yes.
I got you all in there.
Are we all in there? Thanks that wide angle. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Hey, thank you all so much. So feel free to have a seat. Thanks for all that you do. Yes, thank you. All right, and I'll just stay up here in this last one before I come sit down. Our last proclamation is for Women's History Month. So whereas Women's History Month traces its roots to the first Women's History Week in 1980 and has since grown into a nationwide observance that recognizes countless contributions of women to the social, economic, cultural, and civic life of our nation. And whereas the 2026 national theme, Leading the Change, Women Shaping a Sustainable Future, recognizes the leadership of women who are building stronger communities, advancing equity, and shaping systems that promote long-term social, economic, and environmental sustainability. And whereas women throughout history have shaped the course of our communities and our country, often overcoming barriers and inequities to expand opportunities for future generations. And whereas from pioneers and educators to entrepreneurs, artists, caregivers, scientists, public employees, and community advocates, women have strengthened the foundations of families and institutions alike. And whereas contemporary women continue to make history across industries and on the global stage, including in sports and culture, where women are setting new milestones, exemplified by U.S. women athletes at the 2026 Winter Olympics, achieving record-breaking success in women's events, underscoring expanding opportunities and increased visibility in athletics. And whereas the city of Duval is enriched by the leadership, resilience, and compassion of the women in our community, including those who serve on local boards and commissions, lead businesses, teach in our schools, work in local government, volunteer for nonprofits, cultivate the arts, and uplift neighbors in times of need. And whereas the achievements of women in Duval, past and present, have shaped our city into a welcoming, vibrant, and forward-looking community, inspiring young people to pursue their dreams and contribute boldly to the common good. And whereas Women's History Month aligns with International Women's Day on March 8th, reinforcing a global commitment to recognizing women's achievements and advancing opportunity, representation, and equality. And whereas Women's History Month offers an opportunity to reflect on both the progress made and the work that remains to ensure equity, respect, and opportunity for all. Now, therefore, I, Amy McHenry, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim March 2026 as Women's History Month. In the city of Duval, I encourage all residents to celebrate the extraordinary contributions of women in our community. Let us honor the women who have paved the way, recognize those who continue to lead and serve today, and inspire the next generation of girls and young women to shape a future defined by opportunity, dignity, and hope. All right, so next up we have comments from the audience. During the designated public commentary period at city council meetings, individuals are allotted 3 minutes to speak, while representatives of organizations may address the council for up to 5 minutes. Before presenting, kindly disclose your full name and city of residence. Each speaker and all remarks shall be addressed to the city council as a body and not to individual members of council or staff. The city strongly advises submitting verbal comments in writing to expedite subsequent correspondence. Written comments must be received by the city clerk's office by noon on meeting day, addressed to P.O. Box 1300, Duval, Washington 98019, or deposited at the City Hall drop box located at 15535 Main Street Northeast, or by email. Please be aware that the City Council, its boards, and its commissions accept public comments only from in-person attendees at the meeting. The council does not accept handouts or printed material during public commentary sessions. Information intended for the mayor or the city council shall be directed to the city clerk, who will disseminate it following the submitter's instructions. Upon receipt, the city clerk will receive written public comments and subsequently furnish them to the city council or the relevant board or commission. However, it's important to note that written comments will not be orally presented during the council or applicable board or commission meeting. Any written comments received after the noon deadline for written comments will be shared with the council at the next council meeting as part of the city clerk's report. Did we have anyone sign up to give public comment? No? Is there anyone in the audience who did want to give public comment tonight? No? All right. So with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Council, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda?
So
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. On scheduled items, we did the mayor's report and city administrator's report, all in the committee of the whole meeting. So we'll move on to council reports. Are there any council reports tonight? We'll go Councilmember Olin first, and then Councilmember Schaefer.
So I have 3 items tonight. Piggybacking a little bit on the mayor's report from earlier. My second 2 items, actually, I'll start with one other. So I testified last week at the House in Olympia in front of the Committee for Community Safety on Senate Bill 6070, which is a bill which would implement a purple alert, which is an alert in order to mobilize resources to more quickly find people that are in a mental health crisis. They could be actively suicidal, or they could be suffering from dementia, Alzheimer's, autism, folks that might be otherwise hard to find. So far, the bill looks to be relatively well received, bipartisan. So it looks like it's going to be moving forward. There are some questions around civil liberties and sharing of information, but those guardrails seem to be relatively well in place, and so we'll see how that pans out. But anyway, so that's one thing. The next thing was I also attended last week the King County Transportation Benefit District hearing down at the Issaquah Council Chambers. Kind of as Mayor alluded to with SCA. So yeah, I mean they're grossly underfunded. They have huge capital projects on top of needing to just maintain a crumbling infrastructure. Some of the recent, the flood, all the flooding and the rains have led to over $10 million in damages. And is that what it was? Currently exceeding 10 million across more than 20 capital projects. And they haven't even assessed all the damages yet. And they don't want to pay for the engineers to assess the damages because they don't have the money even to pay for the projects that they've assessed so far. So they're really struggling. If they do find additional funding, they do have the West Snoqualmie Valley Road and Ville Duval Road intersection on their priority safety list. So they do want to address that if they have the money. They just don't at the moment. They discussed their different revenue tools. They talked about a 0.1% councilmatic tax. They talked about a 0.2% levy. They talked about adding tag fees, license plate tag fees. Chair Balducci was in favor of implementing the councilmatic tax as soon as possible. Supervisor Perry supported that. And I'm saying supervisor because for those that don't know, there's a difference between council members sitting on council and their supervisors when they're sitting on the Transportation Benefit District. Same people, but it's a different governing body. So Supervisor Barone, he raised concerns because his council district is essentially downtown Seattle, which is one of the highest taxed metropolitan areas in the country. They're already sitting at 10.5%. And so by adding this councilmatic tax or this other levy, now they're all of a sudden at 10.8% tax rate. They're raised to 11%. They don't want to be sitting at that high tax rate. And so he's a little bit resistant to adding these just immediate tax solutions. And though he's sensitive to these kind of aggressive structures. And so, but he's for big picture funding solutions. He just doesn't know what they are yet. One member of the public in the hearing raised an issue. He lives out in unincorporated county, King County. And he just received a tax bill that includes a dedicated road maintenance fee in there. And unincorporated residents pay this fee, this additional tax that covers the unincorporated roads that city residents don't pay, because it's assumed the city residents don't drive on unincorporated roads, but obviously that's not the case, right? And so his suggestion was, well, let's just, add this to all residents' fees, and then you have a little bit more money to spread around. And so that was somewhat well received by the body. And so we'll see what happens. We'll probably see a little bit of all of them. But ultimately, I mean, it just kind of underscored the challenge of funding regional transportation infrastructure issues in a constrained financial environment. And then the last item I wanted to mention was I also attended a PRSC workshop for elected officials. Those that don't know, I don't know if everybody here knows. So the Puget Sound Regional Council is what PRSC stands for. It's a regional planning body that serves King County, Snohomish County, Pierce County, and Kitsap counties. That's roughly 4.5 million people, 2.4 million jobs, 82 cities and towns across 6,300 square miles. They coordinate transportation planning. They distribute federal pass-through funding to that region. They provide research and economic data, and they advocate at the regional level. So at this meeting, what was interesting, they talked a lot about regionalism, and they really talked how even though that these four counties are radically different in nature, we really have to work together if we're going to be successful in advocating for what we want. And it was interesting because as they kind of went around the room and listened to all of us express the issues that we're facing, it was the same issues, across the room. Infrastructure funding constraints, housing affordability pressures, traffic safety concerns, economic uncertainty. So it was nice because the staff there took notes on all of these issues, and kind of committed to working that into their future plans. And so how that's going to manifest, I don't know. But that was one thing that they really tried to work into what they were doing. One thing that also jumped out at me, and it was not an explicit, we were starting to talk about this a moment ago. It wasn't something that was an explicit lesson that they were trying to convey, but it just kind of stood out to me. So they threw up on the screen this picture of Paul Allen and Bill Gates as they were children. And, they were in elementary school, and it was right when, kind of Boeing was booming. And they were talking about, how must it have been for these kids that were in elementary school at the time when we were talking about aerospace and we were talking about all the things that could happen. This company was growing and just what the future might look like. And I just the impression, how impressionable these young minds are when you're forward facing and you're excited about something, and how much I feel like there's some of that missing today. We look at AI and we talk about how many jobs are being lost to AI, and we talk about how in dire straits climate is and what's happening on the planet. And we look at both social media and how algorithms give us reactionary information, but also regular media gives us reactionary information because that's what sells ads, right? And so we're inundated with bad news, and I mean that's kind of the nature of that beast. But I find there's a certain responsibility, I think, that we as leaders or we as adults carry to make sure that when we have the opportunity to share a positive message or a positive future for folks that are younger than us, that we find a way to do that. Because they're impressionable young minds, and we have to help them see something pretty in the future, something to aspire to make something better in the future. So that was one thing also that I took away from that PRSC meeting. So that was my report.
Member Schaefer?
Let's see, the Duvalde Subcommittee, which I'm part of, met again. And again, this is the committee that's really trying to improve the business situation for our local businesses during Duvalde's and other events as well. As I stated before, our businesses actually lose business during these big events. So it's a little bit counterintuitive to what you think might be happening. We do have a survey ready to go out. It's going to ask some questions like, is your business along the Main Street corridor? Is it impacted by Duvalde's? How, from a revenue standpoint, is it impacted by Duvalde's? And also ask for suggestions or other concerns that these businesses might have. I do need a bit of help from the city here, in that this survey is intended to go out to all Duval businesses. And of course, the chamber doesn't have that information. So if we did this once or twice in the past, and I know we can't share that list, but maybe we could share the survey link with John, and then he can send it out to all businesses or something like that.
We can, and it might be do we have a file that will easily go to all of the business licenses?
We will have to run a report.
Yeah.
It might take a bit.
Long list.
Yeah, but we're able to run a report and get email addresses from there.
Okay, good. And I think it's well worthwhile, probably something we're going to do in the future anyway for other types of surveys. Yeah, we can have it help, and then I'll have Kristen, who's the admin for the chamber, get in touch with you because she has the link to the survey, and we can just, she'll send you the, email. You can, approve it and shoot it out. Great. Okay. And some of the ideas are like we've done this, I think, before to some extent, like a business passport, where they visit our local businesses, they get a stamp, And then some kind of, and it's kid oriented kind of stuff, they get some kind of prize at the end. That's one idea, and of course, there's a bunch of other ideas in there as well. That's it.
All right, other council reports? No, folks. So seeing none, we'll move on to, we are going to meet, the Duval City Council is going to meet an executive session to discuss qualifications of an applicant for public employment as allowed by RCW 42.30.110 sub 1 sub G. Council will be in executive session for 20 minutes, so until about 7:46 p.m. And the city council is expected to take further action following the executive session.
But next month.
long as I have most of it, yeah.
This forum.
Okay, so I call the Duval City Council regular meeting back to order at 7:45 PM. So now we'll move on to new business. First, we have Agenda Bill 26-25, Summerview Final Plat. With Director Lena Shefsky, but I'm guessing that Marissa Gardell, our city engineer.
And Mayor Council. I don't have a presentation tonight. So it's just the agenda bill and it's for discussion if you have any questions and hopefully action. Ready?
Okay, that's the final plat. How long has to approve those?
As our code is written, yes, it's a type 5 permit.
Okay, yeah, I read through that, it was like pretty cut and dry, what I could see.
Yes,
Yes,
it is a council approval.
okay, okay.
Authorized in the mayor's.
Should I go ahead and make the motion?
If you'd like,
Yeah, okay. I move to approve Agenda Bill 26-25, approving Summerview, formerly Towns 143, final plat.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve Agenda Bill 26-25, the Summerview Final Plat. Any additional discussion? Councilmember Olin?
Just a brief question. So the page 2 talks about the stormwater detention vault and other infrastructure will be maintained by the HOA or individual property owners. What if they don't? What is there an agreement in place, like an operations and maintenance agreement in place with the HOA, or what if the HOA fails? Is there a backup? I don't know how that works.
Yes, so that's a great question. If HOAs dissolve, the stormwater infrastructure would default to no, actually it wouldn't. As long as the final plat has the undivided ownership of the tract and all of the plat notes that become restrictions of record, it's still, even if the HOA dissolves, there's an equal and undivided ownership of all of those people that created that tract and the infrastructure within it. And I'm pretty sure the way that a few years ago, we got staff got the direction from council that we didn't want to take ownership of the vault anymore. Conveyance and catch basins we would take ownership of, but the vaults would be HOA responsibility. And so that's how we have crafted the final plat restrictions.
So if there's something, if it breaks, I mean, I don't know how problems work, but if it breaks or something happens to it, they're financially responsible for it. But if they don't do it, then we do the work and we put a lien on their homes or something like that?
Yes,
Okay,
that would go into the code enforcement code. And then, yes, and we have specific things for stormwater related things because of our MPDS permit. So,
okay, thank you.
yes.
Councilmember Kozlowski?
Just to build on that, so because it's all fall under a common interest community, there were a bunch of state laws that changed in 2018 on this. So they're actually required to do, for this community size, they'll have to do what's known as a reserve study, which all home buyers will see, and it will show if they're properly funded to support the maintenance plan for it. So all future buyers will see. The other thing is for retention vault. The only thing you really have to worry about is someone drives on top, if there's an earthquake. The general maintenance should be just like pumping out mud.
Okay.
We have one in our community, but they're generally not too painful.
Councilmember Schaefer?
one more, this is actually not specific to this, but if you guys read this, this is yet another development that uses a vault for stormwater retention. And some of you may have seen, I sent out a proposal for a stormwater update that we instead of vaults, we prefer or actually require open ponds for stormwater retention. There's a number of benefits that you guys are probably aware of, but certainly an environmental benefit in the respect that it does provide a little wildlife habitat. Have you ever walked by one of these things at the right time of year and heard the number of frogs in there? They're definite. I mean, and bird habitat and other things. It also does more groundwater filtering, which a vault does none of. And there are chemicals in stormwater, harmful chemicals, and a pond will have a greater benefit in that filtering process. So just, I thought I'd use that just as a FYI. I'm not going to vote against this one.
Any other, Councilmember Wiggins?
Maybe Larissa can answer this. If not, it's fine. Is it standard practice for a final plat to have, the final lift of asphalt and landscaping and critical area mitigation to be bonded at a later date? That
Yes.
normal?
Yes.
Or did we make an exception?
No, that's typical.
Another question, if I could, a water quality treatment facility, is that the same thing these gentlemen were talking about?
Yes. There is, they do also have a filter vault that has, it's additional water quality, so the vault itself actually provides water quality. And then there's an additional water quality on the outlet that are the storm filter vaults, so like the contact filters, and that it's an additional water quality feature.
Gotcha, okay, thank you for that explanation.
Any questions or discussion? Councilmember Olin?
Just a scrivener's error, but on the, I guess, page 3, it says reviewed by finance, December 25th, 2026.
Oh.
We're really planning ahead.
I
know. Thank you. Did I see your hand up too, Councilmember Kozlowski?
Less relevant probably for this, but I think in the earlier ones where they were showing like the actual parking lot stalls for the community. One thing just to flag it for all new developments is all of the drawings are showing parking spots in front of the mailbox. However, the post office disagrees with that in the city, so we should just mark those as not parking spots.
Yes, we do have, the postmaster actually approves the
Oh.
mailbox location, so those locations in your development were approved by the postmaster. Yeah,
For him to
and-
actually deliver.
Yeah, and hindsight is 2020 though, they should be at the curb
Yeah.
and not, they actually want them at the curb and not at the, like behind the sidewalk. But yes, we need to
Yeah.
know park, we need to know park and paint that one similar to what we need to do in the Virginia.
I think our community is good now, but I know it's like a top thing,
It is.
if they can save some pain.
It is a pain point.
Great. Any other questions or discussion? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve Agenda Bill 26-25. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. And last, we have Agenda Bill 26-26, employment contract for incoming Director of Economic and Community Development with City Administrator Cynthia McNabb.
Thank you. So before you, you have, earlier tonight, you read a draft agenda bill relating to an appointment of our Director of Economic and Community Development. We're very excited about the candidate that's been selected and hope that you move forward with approving their employment contract.
Do we want to start with a motion?
Yeah, I need to take a picture here so I can read it.
I know where I can just-
Okay, either one. Thank you.
Just take a picture.
I recommend that council vote to authorize Mayor McHenry to sign an employment contract on behalf of the city of Duval with April Beatty. The motion is I move to approve Agenda Bill 2626, authorizing the mayor to sign an employment contract with April.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I'll hold on to this for 1 second so I can read it. Are there questions or discussion? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve Agenda Bill 26-26, authorizing the mayor to sign an employment contract with Avril Beatty. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say no. Motion passes. And with that, there's no other business on the agenda. We'll adjourn at 7:54. The glare on that clock, I'm always like, what time is it?